They've taken that simple concept and expanded way deeper on it is genuinely impressive, with tons of cool skill trees, events, items, and challenges. I like upgrading my little drone miner guys, but some players might prefer to upgrade their pickaxe or their blast mining. And the game is constantly being updated, even to this day. In fact, one of the biggest updates it's ever had just dropped, making the game 25% bigger than it already was. Now, I know what you're thinking, oh great, another microtransaction-ridden mobile game. But I can honestly say this is one of the most player-first mobile games I've ever played. Most phone games these days have intros that basically just focus on teaching you to spend money, whereas this game has zero ads and never prompts you to spend. There are ways to buy extra goodies and power-ups, but it was clear to me when talking to their marketing team that they really do just genuinely want people to play the fun experience that they've built. It's completely free to play, so please do give it a try by going to idleobeliskminer.com/tierzoo, scanning the QR code on screen, or clicking the link in the description. You'll be supporting the channel when you do. Hope you like it, thank you for watching, and as always, good luck out there.
Wednesday just became your favorite day of the week. From sweet cherries to specialty skirt steak, come save big with Lidl.
The thrill of Black Friday, the best of summer. Save on this summer's must-have styles, the hottest shoes, beauty, and so much more. But these deals won't last long. Macy's...
6 minutos is cool.
Mollusks are one of the most diverse factions in the entire game. Indeed, much more diverse than I think most players realize. They are extremely popular both among casual and competitive players, with some builds demanding incredible levels of skill to pilot, while others are practically AFK. And with so many different potential mollusk builds to choose from, it can be difficult to know which builds are actually competitively viable in the current meta. So today, we're going to go through the mollusk tier list. While I attempt to cover as many of the popular well-known builds as I can, mollusks are an extremely broad category, second only to arthropods in terms of number of individual members. So inevitably, some are getting left out of this video for the sake of time. Still, by highlighting standout builds in both the high and low tiers, hopefully I can give you a good understanding of where the mollusk faction fits into the current metagame, and will be able to fill in the gaps for yourself. But before we dive into the tier list, what is a mollusk? And what are their common attributes? Mollusks are a huge group, encompassing all gastropods, all bivalves, and all cephalopods. While every group has its outliers, most factions at least have some consistency in their base stats. Birds tend to have pretty high mobility, mammals tend to have high intelligence, arthropods high defense, and so on. With mollusks, though, it's pretty hard to pin down any obvious through line. Pick any one stat and you can probably find a mollusk both at the top and bottom of the charts. But one thing you will not find is a mollusk with basic middle-of-the-road stats. While the numbers and combinations will vary greatly between builds, one thing I've noticed is that just about every mollusk has something extreme about it, with at least one stat being either incredibly high or abysmally low. But anyway, given just how hard it is to generalize them, we may as well just dive straight into the tier list. At the bottom of F tier, we have the common slug. Now, while this build may look like it has all the downsides of the snail without any of the benefits of the snail's protective shell, yeah, it's pretty much exactly what it looks like. The garden slug genuinely has some of the worst stats in the entire game, with even its best stat being fairly mid. Its only defensive ability is its slime, which does help ward off attacks from insects. It's a double-edged sword though, as their slime also leaves a trail, making slugs one of the easiest builds in the game to track down. Now, I will admit, there are some advantages to not having a shell, the main one being that slugs can slip through much smaller cracks, and hide underground much more easily. However, since they need to come out to feed anyway, this doesn't really help them avoid predation all that well. So with all these negatives and pretty much nothing else going for them, the snail without a shell is going in F tier. Next in F tier we have the common clam, a build that exemplifies the extreme stat lines I was talking about to a T. With no eyes, terrible movement abilities, and no attacking moves, and no brain, the clam has to rely on only two stats, both of which are quite high. The first is their stealth, on account of the clam's surprisingly decent burrowing ability. By wedging themselves into the seabed, they can stay out of sight from most potential threats. But if an enemy manages to find them in spite of this, the clam has some of the heaviest armor of any mollusk, being able to deflect some pretty substantial damage. But with no ability to counterattack or escape, eventually a persistent attacker will deal enough damage to spell game over. Well, okay, technically clams can move, but I mean, come on. In the current meta, this just isn't enough. What's worse is that even though clams can burrow down to hide, in order to survive they need to filter feed, and to do that, they must poke their most vulnerable weak point above the surface of the seabed, giving away their hiding spot and opening themselves up to a devastating critical hit.
Now we gotta go help people customize and save hundreds with Liberty Mutual. Lulu, where's the golf cart? There it is. Only pay for what you need.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
Sproutsmith number 3. It's just another grocery store.
With fresh organic produce everywhere, it's a bit like a wellness retreat.
Sproutsmith number 45. They don't carry the weird stuff I'm into.
Oh, we've got your weird stuff covered.
Sproutsmith number 1. I'm not a Sprouts person.
If you like fresh finds and better for you discoveries, you're probably a Sprouts person.
At the top of F tier, we have the common snail. The garden snail has most of the same weaknesses as the previous two entries on the tier list, but slightly less severe. Snails are every bit as slow and non-threatening as slugs, but they do at least have a shell to help block attacks. They can even use their shell to shield bash attackers in a pinch, though this doesn't do much damage. However, similar to the clam, because of how slow their movement speed is and how weak their counterattacks are, eventually an aggressive player will be able to punch through their defenses. So they're not the worst of the worst, but compared to some of the unique and powerful abilities we'll see higher up on the tier list, the basic snail build just isn't going to cut it. At the bottom of D tier, we have the scallop. The scallop is essentially a more decked out version of the clam. Though it has a lower base defense stat than the clam, its weaknesses are also much less pronounced. Instead of being completely immobile, scallops, oddly enough, have the jet propulsion ability, something usually only found in cephalopods and box jellies. Though it has a high cooldown, this ability gives them an escape option if they're ever under direct attack, something every other build on this list so far desperately needs. Of course, being able to flee from battle wouldn't do them much good if they couldn't see attacks coming. But thankfully, scallops also spec into primitive eyes, enabling them to detect predators and reposition themselves accordingly. In theory, anyway. One of the issues with simple eyes is that even the most basic stealth techniques, such as, for example, moving very slowly, can get past their danger sense, resulting in scallops getting regularly bodied by starfish. So, while they're definitely a bit more versatile than some mollusks, I can't give them too much credit. Next, in D tier, we're going to have the first of the cephalopods on our tier list, the chambered nautilus. The nautilus is a slow-moving, armored scavenger build that sustains itself mostly on detritus and carrion that is sunk to the bottom of the sea. While being able to swim while rocking a tough shell is impressive, their terrible swim speed shows just how power-crept this ancient build has gotten. Their perception stat is also pretty mid, especially for a cephalopod, which on average have some of the best vision of any marine build. The Nautilus used to be a much more popular build until seals and sea lions were added to the game, as their high agility and armor-piercing bite gave them a crushing matchup versus the Nautilus. So, while it is impressive that the Nautilus has made it through some of the roughest balanced patches in the game's history, the fact that they were driven to the depths by seals doesn't scream high tier to me. First in C tier, we have the Geographic Cone. This marine snail build rocks pretty much all the same strengths and weaknesses as your average snail, with one major exception. This snail can one-shot just about anything. The Geographic Cone has a venomous harpoon which it uses to hunt fish, but it can also use it to defend itself in a pinch. Now, the Geographic Cone is still incredibly slow and really not all that stealthy, so actually landing a hit on a fish is a bit of a challenge. Still, this is one gastropod you really don't want to underestimate. The cone snail's harpoon pierces armor, so any starfish main who thinks that all mollusks are easy pickings is in for a rude awakening. Next in C tier, we have the Dumbo Octopus. This is one of the strangest cephalopod builds in the entire game, and lacks a lot of the signature abilities players normally associate with the octopus. But it also has a mix of other unique traits that normal octopuses don't. You see, the Dumbo Octopus is a deep sea build, and on that server, the normal stealth techniques simply don't apply. Color changing and ink clouds aren't going to do a player any good when most of the major threats aren't relying on vision anyway. So even though those abilities are what the octopus is best known for, unfortunately the Dumbo Octopus has to find other ways to remain hidden from predators. And unfortunately this means it needed to make even more trade-offs. Rather than using jet propulsion, which is a conspicuous and turbulent but incredibly effective movement ability, the Dumbo Octopus swims using large fins on the side of its mantle. This is significantly slower, but a great deal stealthier too. This makes it too slow to catch fish, but it's still able to thrive off of its winning matchup versus crustaceans. Its webbed tentacles are perfect for surrounding and capturing targets on the seafloor. So definitely an interesting build, but by having to sacrifice so much of what makes the octopus so overpowered, the Dumbo Octopus is definitely one of the lower tier ones. And at the top of C tier, we also have the first squid on our list, the bobtail squid. This is another cephalopod which uses a fairly unorthodox ability to boost its stealth. As one of the smallest cephalopods in the game, the bobtail squid really cannot take any hits. So, in order to avoid most of the ocean's major threats, the bobtail buries itself during the day and only comes out at night. However, even under cover of darkness, the bobtail squid would still be at risk of being attacked. Though it's somewhat counterintuitive, on a night where the moon and stars are unobscured, detecting another player in the water isn't as hard as you might think. The shadows they cast in the water are highly visible and give away a player's location immediately, making it very easy for predators lurking below to strike. The bobtail squid deals with this by speccing into an extremely rare and strange ability, bioluminescence. It may seem backwards to hide by glowing, but doing so obscures the squid by removing its shadow. Of course, this does make them easier to detect from above, but attacks at night from seabirds are much less common. The bobtail may have the lowest stats of any cephalopod, but its unique and creative way of hiding in plain sight keeps it out of the low tiers. I can't give it too much credit though, because while its strategy for stealth at night is clever, honestly it's not that good at hiding during the daytime, having a seemingly worse ability to camouflage itself due to its bright coloration.
Imagine being able to build an app with your name on it just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44, a complete AI creation platform. Describe what you want and watch it take shape. You can plan, customize, and expand in any direction. From tools built for one, to platforms ready for many. From passion projects to enterprise-grade systems. Everything is built in and ready to launch. It's a new world of creation, where you can go as far as your imagination takes you. Can you imagine it?
At the bottom of B tier, we have the leaf sheep, a sea slug with a truly unique ability called kleptoplasty. Leaf sheep is able to absorb the chloroplasts from the algae it consumes, essentially stealing the algae's photosynthesis ability. This ability generates XP passively over time, allowing them to grow, heal, and regenerate their energy without eating. It's hard to overstate how game-breaking this ability would be if it weren't on a character with otherwise pathetic base stats. For a human, this would basically be like if sitting in the sun provided you with the same benefits as eating well and working out. Unlike some of the sea slugs higher up on this list, the leaf sheep doesn't really have any defensive abilities. But if you want a character that is extremely forgiving in terms of the resource management side of things, the leaf sheep may actually be the best build in the game for anyone looking for that chill casual playstyle. On pretty much the exact opposite end of the spectrum, next in B tier we have the giant squid. Now obviously this thing's HP stat is extreme, with it being the largest mollusk in the game. But one thing I bet you weren't expecting was for it to also have the highest perception stat of any mollusk. I mentioned before that in the dark depths of the ocean, the normal stealth mechanics don't apply. Well, the giant squid is the exception to this. Its eyes are so large, the largest in the game in fact, that even with only a tiny fraction of a percent of sunlight making it to the depths, the giant squid can still see. This is bad news for all the deep sea builds that assumed camouflage wasn't necessary and spec'd their character accordingly. This incredible eyesight is necessary for more than just hunting though. Being gigantic unfortunately makes you extremely easy to detect via echolocation, so they have to remain vigilant constantly to avoid being ambushed by the Abyssal server's true apex predator. Luckily, their vision has a range just barely more than that of the whale's sonar, so as long as they're on top of their game, they should be able to outmaneuver and avoid attacks. On this same tier, I'm also going to include the Colossal Squid, which has many of the same traits as the giant squid, including massive eyes and incredible dark vision. The Colossal Squid does have a few subtle differences in its kit though. It's slightly heavier, but also less mobile, relying on ambushes using its 2 extra long arms to capture prey, as opposed to the giant squid's more traditional method of rushing down a target with an array of tentacles. The Colossal Squid also has hooks on its arms, which do more damage and can inflict bleed buildup, making them much more dangerous for whales to attack, making up for their slower swim speed. However, at the end of the day, both the giant squid and colossal squid have terrible matchups against whales, and because of their large size, their energy upkeep costs are insane. So they have to play pretty much a perfect game to avoid getting smoked. Both are powerful builds if you know what you're doing, but not without their limitations. At the bottom of A tier, we have another sea slug, the blue sea dragon. Similar to the leaf sheep, this slug also has the power to copy the ability of its main food source. But in this case, the blue dragon isn't consuming algae, it's consuming jellyfish. The blue sea dragon is able to absorb the venomous nematocysts from the tentacles of their prey, and in doing so, gains a massive buff in the form of an equally deadly sting at the tip of its frills. This is incredible, as the blue sea dragon is able to gain the most powerful ability of the jellyfish faction without any of the awful downsides, like, being literally brainless and having no control over their own movement. Blue sea dragons also have much better stealth than a lot of sea slugs, using the counter-shading technique with a bright underbelly and a dark blue backside, making them hard to see both from above and below. While not quite as OP as some of the cephalopod mollusks, the blue sea dragon definitely stands above all other slugs and snails as a unique and formidable outlier. Next in A tier we have the common octopus, a solid representative of the octopus faction as a whole. It possesses the core abilities that define the octopus build, along with its inherent vulnerabilities. Its 2 standout strengths are stealth and intelligence. The common octopus boasts some of the best stealth in the game, capable of changing both its color and texture to blend seamlessly into virtually any environment: dense weeds, jagged rocks, or barren seabeds. And if its camouflage fails and it's ever spotted, it can deploy an ink cloud to temporarily debuff the attacker's perception stat, usually buying enough time to escape. However, escape is often its only viable option, as the octopus has some of the lowest defenses in the game. With no armor whatsoever, any hit it takes can deal devastating damage. Even in a server as perilous as the ocean, where threats abound regardless of armor, the common octopus must play cautiously. Bites from everyday fish can pose a serious risk, so despite its impressive abilities, it requires careful strategy to survive. Speaking of bites though, one lesser known but important ability the octopus has is venom, which it delivers via a bite with its sharp beak. Finally, now's as good a time as any to say that although it's not a combat weakness, the octopus's biggest weakness is its low lifespan. Given that a lot of the octopus's best tricks need to be learned, either by observation or trial and error, the octopus's already powerful intelligence would be a lot more powerful if the devs allowed it to be refined over the course of a few decades, like dolphins, parrots, and humans get. This weakness is pervasive through the entire cephalopod faction, which is interesting because some of the other mollusks are pretty much the exact opposite. But yeah, this is why despite their many overpowered abilities, it's hard to give any cephalopods a top tier rank unless they're truly broken in even more ways than usual. Ranking slightly higher in A tier, the giant octopus adapts on the octopus archetype with one minor tweak, trading some stealth for greater strength. While it retains the ability to change color and texture to blend into its surroundings, and can deploy an ink cloud to escape threats, it's less adept at stealth than the common octopus due to its larger size, which makes it more noticeable when moving. However, this trade-off comes with significant advantages. Its above-average bulk gives it a wider margin of error in confrontations. Unlike the typically less brawny octopus builds, the giant octopus boasts impressive physical power, with arms capable of wrestling mid-sized sharks and a beak that deals substantial slicing damage, in addition to being venomous. It also shares the same high intelligence that other octopuses do, enabling it to tackle problems and improvise solutions on the spot. Though it shares the same lack of armor as other octopuses, leaving it exposed to heavy damage, the giant octopus's enhanced strength and unique abilities more than offset its reduced stealth, marking it as a force to be reckoned with.
Now we gotta go help people customize and save hundreds with Liberty Mutual. Leba, where's the golf cart? There it is. Only pay for what you need.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
We have got to the point where literally anybody can build
Oh
a
my
fully
god,
written
I
app
do not
without knowing how to
care
code.
about base
This is
44.
Next in A tier, we have the Humboldt squid, also known as the Red Devil. The Humboldt squid is the wolf of the ocean. It doesn't have the best stats in any one category. It's not the fastest, it's not the largest, and it's not the deadliest. However, it is well above average in all of those categories, and that, plus some impressive hunting tactics, makes it one of the most fearsome mollusks in the game. During the day, Humboldt squid mates hang out in the deep sea out of sight. But as it gets dark, the hunt begins, and the squid rise from the depths to attack. They hunt in packs, coordinating with each other via pulsing red and white light. These feeding frenzies can tear through schools of fish in an instant, and then return back to the depths before builds like the dolphin can arrive to challenge them. Now, obviously, communicating with light pulses has the disadvantage of giving away your location, so faster characters will usually be able to avoid getting caught in the frenzy. But still, the fear factor alone of getting caught surrounded by large glowing red squid has to earn it a spot in A tier. And last in A tier, we have the Mimic Octopus. The Mimic Octopus is a smaller mollusk with below-average stats for its archetype. However, the Mimic Octopus uses its color change ability in a truly unique way, to shapeshift into the form of other marine characters. In doing so, it can trick other players into misplaying in many different ways. The most obvious strategy is just to mimic a character with a powerful venomous ability, like a lionfish or sea snake. This will cause predators to leave you alone for fear of getting stung or bitten. But this technique can also be used on offense to trick a target into a false sense of security, by mimicking something less dangerous like a starfish or flatfish. Now, while this is all extremely impressive, it's worth noting that the Mimic Octopus's options are fairly limited. It's most effective at mimicking characters that already share its black and white stripe appearance. When it attempts to mimic something else, it's admittedly a lot less convincing. And if their disguise fails, their below-average base stats leave them in a pretty vulnerable position should an enemy attack. A high-skill, high-reward technique, and one that deserves some pretty high recognition, but one that's also easy to overestimate. It's clever, but not quite broken. Okay, we've finally reached the S tier. If you've watched up until this point and are enjoying the video, I'd really appreciate it if you took a second to subscribe to the channel. Thanks. At the bottom of S tier, we have another small mollusk with blue axes, the blue-ringed octopus. This is one of the smallest octopus builds in the game, but you wouldn't know it if all you saw was its power stat. The blue-ringed octopus has the deadliest venom of any mollusk, even deadlier than the geographic cone. Its venom is the same neurotoxin found in pufferfish, which can one-shot almost anything within only a few minutes. Because of the blue-ringed octopus's insanely high damage, this build opts for the aposomatism technique, where rather than attempting to hide from predators using camouflage, when threatened, it instead boldly asserts its presence with vibrant neon blue markings all along its body. In doing so, it is essentially flexing on other predator players, saying it has no reason to fear them and daring them to make a move. This strat is common among players with powerful toxic abilities, and most players quickly learn that bright colors mean danger. Now, one of the usual drawbacks of this ability is that it dramatically cuts the player's own stealth stat. While this trade-off makes sense when it comes to scaring off predators, if you're a predator yourself, this makes the task of catching prey harder, as they'll be able to see you coming more easily. But because of the octopus's innate color change ability, the blue-ringed octopus is able to switch its intimidation ability on and off, allowing it to remain stealthy when it needs to. Now, of course, because it's on the small side, there's always a chance an opponent could overwhelm the octopus and take it down before it had the chance to counterattack. But more often than not, this small octopus is turning the tide on anything that dares challenge it. While it's definitely a glass cannon, the blue-ringed octopus's incredible stats and unique ability to subvert one of its major weaknesses earns it a spot in S tier. And on the topic of subverting weaknesses, next in S tier we have the coconut octopus. This is the octopus build with the highest intelligence stat of any mollusk, and the only one that makes tool use a core part of its strategy. The octopus's biggest weakness is its pathetic defense stat, and this was actually a direct nerf to overpowered cephalopod builds of the past. Many cephalopods used to have thick, sturdy shells like other mollusks did, way back during the Ordovician expansion. By using their incredibly high intelligence and tool use ability, the coconut octopus is able to regain access to heavy armor by equipping the shells of defeated scallops and clams. This makes them much less vulnerable to being picked off by a random attack from a fish or bird. In addition, kind of similar to the mimic octopus, most players don't have their guard up around a clam, so the shells also provide excellent cover to ambush opponents from. And after scoring a win, they can retreat to the safety of their shell to avoid getting it stolen, similar to leopards dragging their food up into trees to avoid hyenas. But shells aren't the only tools the coconut octopus has learned to incorporate into its combat repertoire. Using its water siphon, it can also launch debris at fish, making them one of the only builds in the game with access to a ranged attack. This is excellent at dealing chip damage without leaving the safety of the shell, meaning they don't fall into the same trap as clams by relying on defense with no means of counterattacking. Overall, this is truly one of the most impressive showcases of tool use in the entire game other than humans, as it legitimately subverts one of the weaknesses of the typical octopus build without sacrificing any of the perks. An easy S tier rank.
Whoa.
What's that?
I just built a budgeting app in Base 44.
Guys, Nina just built an app.
Impossible.
Nina can't code.
Interesting. Can it generate reports?
It can now.
Nice.
So you're saying we can all build apps now?
Yeah.
I'm on lunch. I gotta make a call.
I'll be right back.
Just built an inventory tracker. Protein calculator. Let's share an app.
A workflow manager that's
Tracks who still owes for the group lunch.
Trash duty schedule. Since no one seems to care.
I just created a goal tracking system.
We built the same thing, didn't we?
Yep. Can this thing manage contact? Is the SOC 2 compliant?
I want to animate this graph.
Create a party planner.
Profesor de Español.
An inter-office dating app. For dogs. For office dogs.
Harry's body wash with scents like sandalwood and cypress makes you smell expensive, but it can't make you filthy.
And now our final S tier, the cuttlefish. The cuttlefish has a number of impressive stats, including quite literally the highest stealth stat in the game. It has the most advanced version of the color change ability, and is able to swap between colors at such an incredible rate that it can basically animate its skin. This means that in addition to standard camouflage, the cuttlefish can also use its appearance to confuse and hypnotize its prey, or startle and intimidate its predators. Though it may not have the ability to fire projectiles like the coconut octopus, its grappling arms give it a deceptively long reach, often catching players off guard and setting them up to get comboed into the cuttlefish's venomous bite. Even though the cuttlefish has no abilities which buff its defense, actually landing a hit on this agile and mesmerizing character is genuinely one of the most difficult things in the game. Their speed stat is a lot closer to that of a squid than an octopus, even though the rest of their abilities all align much more closely to the octopus. The cuttlefish combines the most powerful elements from both the squid, like high maneuverability and long reach, and the octopus, like intelligence, venom, and color changing, into one overpowered build. And for that, I'm ranking it as the #1 mollusk in the game. And that's the tier list. Overall, the viability of mollusks is super inconsistent. Best cephalopods are truly busted, but the faction is also filled with a lot of suboptimal jank and AFK farming builds. So there really is something for everyone here, from meta tryhards to low-tier heroes. Now, knowing which traits and abilities to invest in can be a difficult choice. Luckily for you, I've partnered with the game Cell to Singularity to provide you the perfect training simulation. Cell to Singularity is a scientifically accurate, non-fiction idle clicker game where you begin as a single cell and have to unlock traits to evolve your biology, increase your intellect, and invent new technology in order to conquer the universe and reach the ultimate singularity point. It is a relentlessly fun idle game that had me hooked for weeks. I love the charming low-poly 3D animals that you unlock as you progress through the Tree of Life. They're currently running a limited...
Hey, you're watching my official compilation channel, but if you want to see my newest videos as soon as they're uploaded, check out my main channel, Chat History. Alright, enjoy the video.
Whether you believe in curses or not, it's a simple fact that some objects are inherently creepy. Something as simple as a little statue that your grandpappy gave you before he particle effected away could make your amygdala go all wiggly. Is it just a statue, or is it something a little bit more sinister?
Invest in Bitcoin.
No! Time to talk about cursed artifacts. Of course a doll is cursed. It's like the go-to item to be cursed. You've got Annabelle, this doll, you got Furbies. But first, there was Robert. His story begins in the early 1900s in Key West, Florida, with little 4-year-old Eugene Robert Otto. The young boy had reportedly received the doll as a present from either his grandfather or from a house servant. Most sources claim it was a servant woman who apparently handmade the demonic doll and gave it to Eugene in retaliation for being mistreated by his parents. This certainly serves the whole curse narrative, so let's go with that. Either way, Eugene welcomed his new doll friend and decided to name him Robert. He is a life-size life-size cloth doll stuffed with wood wool. Being life-sized, this thing's freaking huge, sitting at around 40 inches in length. Non-Americans would call that a meter. It's basically the size of another small child. Now best friends, the two were inseparable day in and day out, sitting, playing, solving differential equations. So after around 6 years of pretty much nothing super spooky happening, something super spooky happened. Eugene was having a nice deep dreamy sleep when he woke up to find Robert just kind of sitting at the foot of his bed, staring at him. That's not good. Soon after, Eugene's mom, who was also having a solid dream, was abruptly awoken by the sound of Eugene's desperate and terrified screams, accompanied by the banging and scraping of moving furniture. She quickly and unanimatedly rushed down the hallway, ripped the door open, and found little Eugene in a fetal position on his bed, clearly petrified in fear, with a still staring Robert on the bed. Oh, and all the furniture had been inexplicably overturned around the room. When questioned about what happened, Eugene simply said, "Robert did it." Oh, okay. Over the next several years, whenever there was mischief afoot, Robert was to blame. Although skeptical, Eugene's parents had their fair share of uneasy experiences too. Allegedly, they would hear Eugene conversing with Robert, which is innocent enough for kids with imaginary friends, but they would often hear an unfamiliar voice responding to Eugene in conversation, accompanied by creepy giggling. Sometimes they would even see Robert moving around out of the corner of their eye. After growing up and being soul-crushed by the weight of adult life, Eugene returned to his estate with his wife to find Robert locked away in a chest. Ugh, I hate it. Mrs. Otto wasn't a huge fan of the old doll and demanded that Robert remain in the chest, and being a good husband, Eugene conceded. Remember, fellas, happy wife, happy life. But this did not make Robert too happy. There were reports from house guests of hearing scurrying in the attic with that same creepy giggling. Even children passing by outside reported seeing Robert in the window staring at them and even making fun of him, though I'm not too sure how well they could see that from such a distance. Eugene, knowing that he locked Robert in the chest multiple times, would often find him sitting by the window. Fast forward, Eugene dies in 1974 and a new family moves into the house. Their curious daughter finds Robert and gets super excited. A new house and a creepy, decrepit, possessed doll? Where do I sign? But it didn't take long for everything to come full circle. The daughter would wake up screaming for her parents when she saw Robert moving about the room. In response, her parents were all neat and slammed Robert into a box and gave him away. The devilish doll is now on display at the East Martello Museum in Key West, Florida, where you can meet him yourself. Or you can deal with that shadow person that's currently staring at you from the corner of your bedroom. Sleep tight. We all know that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Some artists pour their heart and soul out onto the canvas, while others just dump out a can of paint and call it a day. Regardless, art evokes emotion and meaning behind the brushstrokes, which is why painter Bruno Amadeo created the Crying Children series in the UK in the 1950s. However, the origin of his inspiration is up for debate. Some sources say that Amadeo adopted a little adorable orphan boy whose parents died in a house fire. But tragedy would follow the little no-parent-having gremlin when Amadeo's own studio caught fire shortly after. The orphan boy, who was blamed for the fire and swiftly hucked to the road, eventually grew up and allegedly lost his own life in a car fire in the 70s. Another, more plausible inspiration was from witnessing children orphaned by the events of World War II. Over 60 paintings of crying children were created between the 1950s and the 1980s. Super depressing. But oddly enough, them weird Brits absolutely loved the paintings. Over 50,000 prints were sold and displayed in homes. But listen, I gotta ask, who the friggin' flip puts a picture of a crying child in their home? What's that? Oh, that's just a crying boy painting. Isn't he adorable? No. But that's not the weird part. The weird part is what happened to many of those who had the copies. Over the years, many owners of these paintings reported house fires which devastated their homes. Whole kitchens set ablaze, living rooms charred, bedrooms burned. But a common theme was that the crying children paintings survived, unscathed and intact. Hundreds of these reports came in, and many firefighters frequently found the freaky features face down and fire-free. Some people claim that they would even hear screams and crying sounds coming from the portraits before being retrieved. To put the idea of the curse to rest, a newspaper editor advised any concerned owners of the portraits to send them in to be destroyed. In the end, over 2,500 prints were received and subsequently burned, though it did prove difficult to do so. It is generally agreed upon that the reproductions were printed on fire-resistant, high-density hardboard, so they were pretty difficult to actually set on fire. But as usual, people denied logical thought and decided that the supernatural explanation was the only possibility. It's probably best practice to just never hang any paintings in your home. You just never know their next move.
If you love junk journaling, Five Below literally has everything you need to make your memories super cute.
Need a minute? Take it. It's something cold, colorful, and made just for you. Wawa's Refreshers. Recharge your energy drinks and lemonades are ready when you are. Hit refresh. Gotta have a Wawa.
Dolls, paintings, and now furniture. Anything can be cursed if you piss off the wrong people enough, which leads to our next cursed artifact, the conjured chest. This finicky piece of furniture has quite the troubled backstory to it. It all started in the early 1800s in old Kentucky. Here, plantation owner Jeremiah Graham, sometimes referred to by pseudonym Jacob Cooley, was getting ready to have his first child. The thing is, Jeremiah was about as useless as an inflatable dartboard, so he had someone make it for him. And what's a plantation owner without a few slaves? This is the American South after all. One particular slave, named Remus, or Hosea in some sources, was a master carpenter and was given the task of building a chest of drawers, which apparently is different from a dresser. This is a dresser, and this is a chest of drawers. See? Very different. Remus got to work in crafting the chest, spending countless hours perfecting the piece. Once completed, he presented the chest to Jeremiah. Excellent work, Remus. I give you full credit for this wonderful display of craftsmanship. Isn't it beautiful? Hell, I'd make sweet love to it right now if you weren't watching. But of course, that's not what happened. Instead, Jeremiah hated it so much that he actually ended up beating Remus to death over the matter. This understandably sparked an outrage amongst the other plantation slaves, initiating a plot to seek revenge. According to the Kentucky Historical Society, the other plantation slaves secretly cursed the gift, sprinkling dried owl's blood while uttering a secret chant. Despite despising the decorated drawers, Jeremiah moved the chest to the newborn's nursery. According to legend, anyone associated with the chest had suffered a miserable death. It is said that the demonic drawers have a kill count of 18 across a 100-year span. Here's a few of them. Jeremiah's firstborn, for whom the chest was made, got spawn camped. Jeremiah's nephew, whose clothes were put in the chest, was stabbed on his 21st birthday. A couple who inherited the chest both died, one from a severe illness, and the other was killed in an accident. A recent bride who stuffed her wedding dress in the drawer prematurely died in 1897. One fella's mom put some of his mittens in the chest in 1909. He fell off a train 30 feet to his death. Another woman rearranged her house and moved the chest to her room. She took her own life a few years later in 1915. In 1946, a guy placed his hunting clothes in the chest. Then someone else placed a bullet in his chest. Frustratingly, Jeremiah himself actually escapes any premature demise. After a while, enough was enough. In the late 1940s, the latest owner had her maid break the curse. But how do you break a curse? Simple. You just obtain a dead owl, have it watch you pick and boil willow leaves for one whole day, put the liquid in a jug and bury it such that the handle is facing east under a flowering bush. If all goes well, you die and the curse is lifted. The maid did all this and, sure enough, died shortly after, becoming the last casualty of the conjured chest, but ultimately breaking the curse. Or so they say. Back over 5,300 years ago, when you were nothing but a speck in the atmosphere, no more significant than you are now, some guy got shot in the back with an arrow while traversing the Utsul Mountains in modern-day northern Italy. Since he failed to activate his protective prayers, he couldn't recover and got PK'd pretty hard. In non-gamer speak, he died. But this wouldn't be the end of his journey. Thanks to the very cold conditions of snow and ice on the mountain, the guy's remains froze and his body was preserved for thousands of years. The man was discovered in 1991 and given the name Footsie, after the mountain range in which he died. That's like naming someone who fell off of a cliff Cliffy, or Clifford, like the big red dog. God, imagine the shits he took. The mummified man is regarded as one of the most well-preserved bodies ever recovered, despite looking like old beef jerky. Problem was, Ötzi apparently wasn't a fan of his newfound fame because many of those associated with his discovery ended up suffering pretty awful deaths, starting the rumor of the Iceman's curse. The first was Rainer Henn, the head of the forensics team who examined Ötzi. He had picked up the frozen little fellow with his bare hands to place him in a bag for transport. As a prize for this good deed, Henn was awarded with getting absolutely wrecked in a car crash a year later in 1992 while on his way to give a lecture about Ötzi. A little while later, Kurt Fritz, a mountaineer who assisted Henn, got hugged by an avalanche. A few months after that, journalist Rainer Hutzel, who filmed the removal of the corpse, died from a big old brain tumor. We then jump ahead to 2004 when Helmut Ziemann, one of the tourists who originally found Ötzi, was discovered dead and frozen in the same exact spot. An hour after his funeral, the head of his mountain rescue team died of a heart attack. But not everyone was too keen on the idea of the Iceman's curse. For instance, archaeologist Konrad Spindler, who examined Ötzi's remains, said that the whole curse idea was silly, saying, quote, "This is all a media hype. The next thing you'll be saying is that I will be next." He died shortly after. Multiple sclerosis. You know how it is. The final death associated with the Iceman to date was Dr. Tom Lloyd, who performed a DNA analysis on Ötzi. When he was just about to finish a book on the cold cadaver's history, he was found dead in his home, despite being in relatively fair health. Now, of course, it has to be said that there have been plenty of others who have studied, photographed, poked, and even caressed Ötzi's leathery sunken skin who are still alive and well today. But if you want to take the chance with the curse yourself, you can visit Ötzi in the South Tyrol Archaeological Museum in Bolzano,
I actually know of
Italy.
this one.
Just remember
It's
to
very
not
cool.
play footsies with Ötzi's tootsies.
Anthropology is pretty
The thing
cool.
about Boston Web,
Guys,
we give you every reason
anthropology
to
is
believe your
actually
story
really cool.
is
I do
legendary.
recommend that if you are interested in it, you study it.
Need a
Because
minute?
you will not
Take
regret
it.
it.
With
Because
something
it is
cold,
very
colorful, and made just for you. Wawa's Refreshers, recharger energy drinks, and lemonades are ready when you are. Hit refresh. Gotta have a Wawa.
Evil people you've never heard of. They say that if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. A quote that perfectly describes Vasily Blokhin, the deadliest executioner in known human history. Blokhin got his first taste for blood after joining the Red Army during the events of World War I. Over the years, he became the perfect soldier. One who is able to perform tasks effectively, efficiently, and without hesitation. This, of course, really accelerated Blokhin's military career, as in 1921, he was recruited into the Soviet secret police organization known as the NKVD. One bonus on his extensive resume was his innate ability to remain emotionally numb when carrying out acts of violence. He simply saw it as part of the job, comparative to menial tasks like filing paperwork or having to put up with Deborah from HR's incessant complaints that your funny shirt just isn't work appropriate. Blokhin's unique skill, if you would call it that, quickly distinguished him amongst his peers. If you needed someone dead, Vasily was your guy. His work and unwavering loyalty continued to push him upward and onward. In just 6 years, he was assigned as head of a newly created branch of the NKVD by Mr. Supreme Soviet leader guy Joseph Stalin, a branch specifically designed for executions. And with that, Blokhin had become one of Stalin's most trusted workers, executing low and high-profile targets without question.
Excellent work, Blokhin. That goes right up on fridge.
During his service, Blokhin had personally executed thousands of people, including high-ranking Soviet officials, during the Great Purge, an internal mass execution of anyone remotely accused of opposing Stalin's rule. Blokhin himself had been spared from the purge due to his repeated proofs of loyalty to the Soviet cause, his magnum opus being his involvement in the Katyn massacre. Now, if you've never heard of the Katyn massacre, I wouldn't be surprised. When teaching about World War II, history classes tend to focus on German war atrocities and kind of skim over all the other ones, especially the Soviet Union's. Despite the German invasion of Poland in 1939 and World War II officially starting, the Allied powers of Great Britain and France didn't really do much in retaliation.
Oi, Germany, you better leave Poland alone.
Oh, fair point. Carry on. The big bad Soviet Union had also invaded Poland just a few weeks later, capturing hundreds of thousands of Polish prisoners of war. many of which were sent to labor camps, but in the spring of 1940, around 22,000 prisoners consisting of Polish officers, engineers, teachers, and other civilians were systematically executed under Blokhin's supervision, with Blokhin himself having personally executed over 7,000 people in just 28 days. Now think about that for a second. 7,000 people in 28 days. That's 250 people a day. Now, Blokhin and his men reportedly would work 10-hour days nonstop, so that's 25 people an hour, or one person every 2 to 3 minutes. Now, these weren't indirectly through ordering his men, but this was by his own hand. Blokhin had pretty much developed an assembly line of death so efficient it would make Henry Ford envious. Prisoners would be escorted into a soundproofed room against a sandbag-lined wall. Without a word, these prisoners' last sensation would be feeling the muzzle of a German pistol in the back of their neck before being brutally murdered. Wait, a German pistol? I hear you ask. Why would Soviets be using German pistols? 2 words. Plausible deniability. Think of it this way. If thousands of victims in mass graves happen to be found with German bullets lodged in their noggins, who do you think's going to be blamed? Don't look at us. It was them. Blokhin's massacre is regarded as the largest mass murder conducted by a single person in known human history, even acknowledged by the coveted Guinness Book of World Records in 2010. Really stretching for content there. It is believed that throughout his career, Blokhin's personal kill count had reached tens of thousands, but his spree would soon come to an end. After Stalin privately passed away in a puddle of piss in 1953, Blokhin was forced into retirement in disgrace. He was ostracized by the public and stripped of his military honors during the de-Stalinization of the Soviet Union. So, of course, he did what any Russian does when they're sad or happy or breathing. He consumed a lot of alcohol. A habit that eventually led to his death in 1955 at the age of 60. Right after the thrilling events of World War I in 1918, the Austro-Hungarian Empire had collapsed. With a little bit of elbow grease and the mashing together of various kingdoms and regions, a new political entity was formed. The state of Slovenes, Croats, and Serbs. Home to many Slovenes, Croats, and Serbs. One of those kingdoms thrown in the mix was Croatia, the birthplace of this stern jug of juice, Ante Pavelic. His main personality trait was loving Croatia. God, he loved Croatia. So much so that he made a name for himself and rose through the ranks as a politician and representative in state parliament in order to demand Croatian independence. But this guy, Alexander I, had other ideas. Who's he? Well, he's the Prince Regent in these parts and the one who just got done unifying all of these kingdoms and states. Years and years of political turmoil ensued, which is honestly to be expected when you force a bunch of different political regions together into singularity. In 1929, now King Alexander had hit a boiling point. In order to regain order, he dismantled and banned all political parties, declaring a royal dictatorship. He even came up with a new name for his kingdom, Yugoslavia. Yugoslavia. But since Yugoslavia is not Croatia, Pavelic had it. He fled the kingdom and conspired with revolutionary groups to undermine the rule of Yugoslavia, who responded, "Do you want a death sentence? Because that's how you get a death sentence." And so Pavelic got a death sentence. He was exiled to Germany, but since he didn't feel like dying quite yet, he instead skedaddled off to seek asylum in Italy. There, he used his political influence and persuasive stern look to form the Ustasha, a Croatian nationalist movement aimed at achieving Croatian independence by any means necessary. And you can bet your fat tits that means bombings, assassinations, and uprisings. During said uprisings, King Alexander regrettably stated, "If you want a regime change, you need to kill me." They did. On October 9th, 1934, King Alexander I was assassinated by Ustasha member Vlado Chernozemski.